Earlier I spoke to Andrew Wallace, who is a Liberal MP and he's the chair of the Israel Allies, for more on the opposition view. Andrew, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Patricia.
You're the chair of the Israel Allies caucus. What have you made of the latest statement that the government has signed?
Well, look, we have concerns most recently about the government's move, or at least willingness to look at announcing its agreement to a Palestinian state. The coalition is of the view that the two-state process is and remains the most appropriate way of going about this. That can only be done as a result of a negotiated process between Israel and Palestinians. And we think that any attempt to try and bring unilaterally the recognition of a Palestinian state forward is really just rewarding Hamas for the attacks that it perpetrated on Israel on the 7th of October 2023.
But how is it a reward to Hamas when the French, the UK have all been explicit that Hamas is not to have a future role, and Australia has consistently said that as well, and in fact in this statement that's clear. How is that a reward when in fact the conditions that everyone is placing is that Hamas doesn't have a role in a future government?
Well, Hamas cannot have a role. That much is clear. I mean, the reality is this war could be over today. Unfortunately, the mainstream media don't seem to be picking up on this issue. The war could be over today if Hamas was to lay down its weapons, surrender and return the current 50 or so hostages that are still being held. Now, to be talking about Palestinian state at this point in time is still too early, and it has to be done through a negotiated process. That has been the position of countries for many years.
And they're all changing with respect. This is, I think, the significant part of this story. The UK is a very strong ally of ours. It's actually one of our AUKUS partners in the defence space. And the
so
UK,
is the United States, PK.
Absolutely, but the UK has shifted significantly on this question. And in fact, Australia hasn't gone as far as the UK. Many people would like Australia to go further. The Prime Minister is still talking about some preconditions before agreeing. So where's the denouncement of the statement? I'm just trying to work out why you would denounce the statement that the government signed when it talks about all of the conditions that you talk about, but actually getting to a position of a two-state solution, which is actually your party's policy.
Well, it is our party's policy, and but the reality is an announcement of a Palestinian state at this point is too premature. It has to be done by way of a negotiated settlement. That much is clear. And you talk about the United Kingdom having moved. Well, our other AUKUS partner, the United States, hasn't. So just because the United Kingdom lands on a certain position doesn't mean that Australia has to either.
Donald Trump is calling what's happening in Gaza a starvation. Is it a starvation? Well,
look, the images that we are seeing coming out of Gaza are clearly a humanitarian crisis. I spoke with the Israeli ambassador just yesterday, and I called it that. I mean, no person could look at the images and not feel a deep sense of grief. Just last week, I think one of the most challenging pieces of video I saw was a father cradling his dead child. You know, your heart goes out to those sort of situations. There is no doubt that there is a lot of hardship. There is food deprivation that is being experienced in Gaza right now, but we also have to look at why. So we know that Israel ceased supplies into Gaza several months ago. And I was very, very pleased to see that Israel was just over the weekend changed its position on that. But
would you like to see Israel go further, though? And you mentioned, I've got to get you on this, which I'm really interested in this meeting. with the Israeli ambassador, you said you made it clear. So you said to the Israeli ambassador, what we are seeing is starvation, because they put out a statement contesting that. Were you saying that's what we are witnessing?
I called it a humanitarian crisis because that's what it is. And no one wants to see civilians, no one wants to see children being impacted the way that they are. So I welcome Israel's change of heart in relation to the supply of aid into Gaza. But you cut me off before, PK, and that is that ultimately we've got to look at why we are here where we are today, and that is because Hamas has been effectively hijacking aid that's been coming into Gaza. They've been holding on to it for their own purposes. They've been selling it to Palestinian civilians at exorbitant rates. That much is clear. We've got to see the big picture here. We've got to see all the facts, not just part of them.
Yeah, and the facts, according to the humanitarian organisations, over 100 of them, is that there's no safe passage for the aid to come in through trucks. That's what has to happen, doesn't it? There has to be a lot more aid that goes in to stem what you call a humanitarian crisis. Yeah, even the change that we saw over the weekend, it's not enough to actually deal with what is unfolding.
Well, according to news reports that I heard yesterday, PK, in the last 24 hours, some 2.5 million meals were provided in one day. So, and that was yesterday. So there is significant amounts of aid that is now flowing. I welcome that. But we can't let Hamas off the hook here. Hamas is the reason why this war is continuing. Hamas is the reason why the war started in the first place, when it attacked and killed 1,200 Jews on the 7th of October 2023. And Hamas could end this war today if it laid down its weapons and returned the hostages.
Would you like to hear Benjamin Netanyahu also commit to a two-state solution? Because there's been an absence of any commitment to a two-state solution from the Israeli side.
Well, if you don't have a two-state solution, what do you have, PK? And that's the question that I think everybody's grappling with right now. If it's a one-state solution, then it's a winner-take-all proposition. And then, well, what happens to the vanquished? There are 2 million people living in Gaza right now. What happens to them? So the coalition's position remains that a negotiated position in relation to a two-state solution remains the only outcome for a lasting peace in Israel.
Andrew Wallace, I know you've got to go. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, PK.
Authorised by Andrew Wallace, LNP, Boccarina, Queensland.